93% of your life is spent indoors, but so many of our favorite moments are outdoors. The fresh air, the feeling of peace. Since warmer weather is almost here, let's make the most of it with Outer, the new outdoor furniture company with purposely designed furniture to get you outdoors more.
Outer makes the world's most beautiful, comfortable, innovative, and high-quality outdoor furniture, all from sustainable materials. I love the new outdoor dining table and chairs I just bought. It looks great in my backyard, and it's the perfect setup for hosting a dinner party. Go to liveouter.com/thefounderhour to see all the incredible products they have to offer.
For a limited time, get 10% off and free shipping. That's liveouter.com/thefounderhour. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey everyone, before we get into the episode, just a quick reminder, if you enjoy what you hear, please follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. That way you get notified when new episodes drop. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, at The Founder Hour. Let's get into it.
What's up, everybody? We're here with Giada De Laurentiis. That's not correct.
No, that's good. That's good. That's good.
Even better than what
was
you
it
said.
better?
De Laurentiis.
De Laurentiis.
Yeah.
Did I make it like even more extreme than it had to be?
A little bit.
Okay, I like that. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Everybody knows who you are, so they can practice your name, but you could say it for us so that they can get it correct.
Giada De Laurentiis.
Boom.
Perfect. Well, it is a pleasure to have you on the show.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
We're excited to talk all things Giada, your background, your early days, all the way to being a chef and on TV, all the way to having your own company, Giadzy, and other restaurants and everything you're up to now. So why don't we take it back? I know you're born in Rome, and you have a family of entertainers, you have producers, actresses. What was life like for you growing up in Rome with your family, and just what do you remember?
Well, I left Italy, Rome specifically, when I was 7. So little tidbits here and there. Yes, my family, I come from like a movie making family. My grandfather was a movie producer. He made over 600 movies in 60 years.
That's crazy.
Yeah, a lot of movies. And my grandmother was Miss Rome when they met, and then she starred in all his movies. So they became sort of this powerhouse.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's kind of like the Coppolas too.
Correct.
Like
the Coppolas did that. Yeah. I mean,
movie.
it's Sophia Loren did that with her husband. Like, it was a thing in those days. It just, and they do it
it's
today.
nice to just keep
put
it in
an
the
actor
family.
and a producer together, and they'll build on that.
Yeah.
So, so at a certain point, my grandfather wanted to move to the States because I think anybody who's an immigrant knows that you don't make it in this world until you make it in America. So he wanted to move. And so he took our entire family, and I was 7, and my siblings were younger, and we all moved. We moved to New York first, and then we moved to LA.
And what year is this?
1977.
Okay.
And did he want to just be closer to Hollywood?
He got a deal at Gulf and Western to make movies there. And then after that deal expired after 2 years, he moved to LA, where he got another deal, and he started making movies there at Universal. And he was at Universal on the lot for a very long time.
Yeah.
Do you have any memories of watching the films that he made as a kid?
Oh yeah, in his screening rooms, absolutely. I mean, it's funny when I was a kid, my birthday parties were always in my grandfather's screening room watching a movie that he made. Whether I wanted
Happy
to
birthday.
do that, I know. It was always
No
embarrassing.
candles for you,
I
just
was
films.
just like, So yes, we watched a lot of movies.
Yeah.
We went to a lot of sets. I grew up on sets. And for a long time, I didn't think there was anything else. I mean, I always tell people, like, growing up in LA or even in New York when I was really little, you grow up in a bubble, and it wasn't like it is today where there's social media, so you can see what everybody's doing.
Yeah.
I grew up in a time there was no social media.
Right.
You could see what people were doing in a magazine, but like 2 months later, there was no immediacy. Like, you didn't know what was happening around you unless you were in it.
Right.
So whatever was going on in our lives, that's what in my mind was going on for everybody. Everybody lived like I lived.
Yeah. Were you someone that was like curious though to see like what's happening and out there and like?
No,
You just didn't,
absolutely not curious. I was shy. I was introverted. I came from a large Italian family where, my grandfather and the men of the family dominated, and women sort of followed along, not in a bad way, but, you know, my grandparents, you know, my whole family, they traveled a lot. And so weekend Sunday meals were sort of our thing together when they were in town. But
So
I
close,
traveled.
super close family. Like,
Very close-knit family. So close that I remember my parents always saying, you don't need friends. You have siblings. You
These are
have
all your
family. You
friends.
have cousins. These are your friends.
yeah.
You don't need to have friends outside of that. That's how close-knit it was.
Friends
And
by force.
correct. If you talk to a lot of Latin families, they're very much like that.
Right. And
Jewish
to this day,
families
they're
are
still
like that. Yeah. It to this day, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, still today. So it's very different than the way my daughter is growing up.
Right.
You know,
But you can say that about a lot of immigrant families, I would say.
tons.
Because, I mean, that's early on, especially when they came or wherever they immigrated to, whether it was the U.S. or other places, that's all they had, right? Or that's the first thing that or the community was the first thing that they sought.
Yes, and also if you want to preserve
Right.
your community and your culture and your heritage, you kind of have to do that. Otherwise, the more these kids go out in the world, they adopt all of the other culture. You know what I mean? They
Right.
lose their own.
Yeah, it's about assimilation.
It is. It's about assimilation, but for us, it was also about really holding on to who we were. And thank goodness, because I don't think I would do what I would
Right.
do today.
Talk to us about like what food, like what kind of place food held in the family and just in your life as a kid.
Everything revolved around food. Everything revolved around every meal.
Yeah.
So when we have one meal, it was talking about the next meal and the meal after that and the meal after that. It was always about food. So to back up a second, since we already said we were going back and
Yeah.
forth,
We'll jump around.
to jump around, we're going to go back in time. And my grandfather is one of 10 children, and his parents owned a pasta factory in Naples before World War II.
Wow.
Okay. So his mother would make pasta and dry it on the rooftop of the building they lived in. Now, you have to remember, like, I know it sounds strange, but this was a way of life for many, many people in Naples. Like, Naples was the capital of pizza and pasta. And when I say pasta, I don't mean machines. I mean, they made them by hand and they stringed them. And the way that the ocean air, the sea would dry the pasta, it would create this great texture, this rough texture. Anyhow, he would go door to door with his siblings and they would sell their parents' pasta and later their sauces. So that he became a traveling salesman at the age of like 7 or 8. He started selling, and that's one of the reasons Italians had, well, many cultures had so many children to help, find. Yeah. So he only went to elementary school.
Yeah.
Never had any schooling past that. Anyhow, then World War II broke out. He joined the military, based in Capri, learned all about the food in Capri on that island. And when he came back, he decided he wanted to be an actor. He left his family with like $50, went to Rome and tried to be an actor, realized too short, not cute enough. And he realized, I'm a really good salesman. I'll get other people's ideas and I'll sell it. And that's what happened. And got his wife, who was a model / Miss Rome, to be the lead actress. So he created this world for himself. But what really drew him, and I think what grounded him, was his family and their food. And so food was the essence of everything we did. And if you talk to people who've done movies with my grandfather, they will tell you they all remember eating his food. He did not entertain outside his house, ever. You always came over for a meal. And he usually always made the same things. He started with pizza as an antipasti. He went on to a pasta. He went on to a meat dish, roasted potatoes, broccolini, and then a table filled with different Neapolitan desserts. So that was his way to woo you. Everything was around that. And when he did movies, when he produced movies, he would cook a meal once a week for the entire crew.
Well, now I got hungry. Why don't we just end this podcast?
So I mean,
and go get some
that's
pizza?
but that's what he. So yes, it's all about food all the time.
Did you find yourself like trying to help him out in the kitchen or help the family out, or just like as a kid?
So as a kid, my siblings and I, he would set up little stools in the kitchen. He would make pizza dough, And then we would roll out our pizza and he'd give us a bunch of toppings and we would just top our own pizzas and he'd cook them for us. And that was the beginning of my love of food.
So Pat and I talk about this all the time, and we had mentioned Europe before the podcast started and how incredible it is. When you came to the United States and you said New York was the first stop?
Yes.
Okay. Was there for you a visible difference in just the ingredients that you would see when you were in Italy versus here, or just the way the food was prepared in general? Was that something that now looking back you could say, yeah, there was a visible difference there, like it was kind of shit? Or was that not the case yet?
We didn't really eat anything outside of what my parents imported.
Yeah.
My parents imported everything.
Got it.
Every pasta, every cheese, every tomato. There was no Italian food to be spoken of at the grocery store. There was nothing.
That's crazy.
We're talking the early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing. And as I grew up, there was a lot of TV dinners.
Yeah.
That's what was popular when I was a kid.
Right.
But there were no Italian ingredients, especially not like today.
That's
we live in
crazy.
a totally different. People don't realize the U.S. has its leaps and bounds to what people can get now.
Yeah.
Even when I started on Food Network
Maybe not a good
23 years
thing.
ago.
Maybe not a good thing though.
I mean, I think
yes and no.
trade opened up, right?
Yeah.
So like we got a lot of things we never could get before.
Right.
I mean, the world has opened up in a way we couldn't have
Like
imagined.
distributors probably started, and
Well, globalization.
I mean, good because you know so much more than you ever did.
Right.
You can taste a little piece of Italy without ever having to travel there. That's a wonderful
that's
thing
what I
for
don't
some
like.
people.
That's what I don't like. You go there and you're like, even though it's better there, you're like, I've seen this, right? From the shopping, the food, to the images, the paintings, right? You're like, I've seen this before. So like,
You've seen it, but you've never touched
experienced it. Right.
It's different when you actually step foot in another country, whether it's Italy or any other country. I don't care what you've seen.
Breathe that air.
You breathe the air, the people, the energy that you get off of these off of people, and just to actually be able to touch one of these ruins, or just to be in the space is totally different.
Yeah.
It really is different.
yeah. What was DDL Food Show?
DDL Food Show was my grandfather's attempt on basically bringing real Italian food to this country, because at the time, and this was in the 80s, at the time there was Italian American food, which is not Italian food. It is Italian American food, not better or worse, brought on by immigrants and their families who had come a long time ago. But it's truly a merging and a blending of American food and Italian food. Right? So it's not traditional Italian. So he really wanted to bring a traditional Italian. So he opened up a gourmet shop, not dissimilar to Italy, that we all know now. Mm-hmm. And he brought all of his buddies that he grew up with, the pizzaiolos, the bread makers, the pasta makers, all of these guys, he imported them and brought them to the U.S. He had one in New York City in Trump Tower and one in Los Angeles on Beverly Drive. So he had all his buddies there, and he would have the stands like Italy. There's a pizza stand over here. There's a pasta stand, and people would come. And he also had like a small market of products and a little restaurant up top. And in New York, it was just so popular. It was there for 15 years. LA struggled a little bit. I think people on the West Coast at the time weren't quite there yet.
Right. They weren't. It was like still happening in New York. Yeah.
Yeah, it just hadn't moved west yet.
Right.
But he lived in LA, so he wanted it there, and he did all his movie premieres there, and but it just didn't catch on the way New York did. And I went there after school, the one in LA, and I was 12 years old, and I remember specifically, ingrained in my mind, the look and the awe, the shock and awe on people's faces when they walked in. Not only because of the aromas that were going on, but all the Italian talking and all of the
they weren't used to
eating
it.
and giving nothing.
Yeah.
Nobody was used to it.
It's like you open the door and you're like in Italy.
Yeah, it's like you've been transported. And so I think that was really, to me, that's what drew me in. It sucked me in to that world.
Yeah.
Did you have any idea of what you wanted to do when you
Not at
quote,
12.
grew up? Yeah.
No. I just knew I wanted somewhat of that reaction.
And when did you eventually realize that?
I eventually realized it a little bit later in my life when I started to realize that I was good at cooking and I would cook for my family, and that my grandfather was like, wow, you got it. It's good. Not that I would make a career out of it. I mean, I know for a fact he was like not happy when I decided to actually go that route. But I think that I got attention in a family that was, very dominated by all the men, and I got attention for cooking and also felt powerful because of that. And I think those are the reasons that I ended up in this field.
Was there a route that was a little bit more expected of you from?
Yeah, you work in the movie business.
It was like you.
Yeah, and I had to do it.
Yeah.
I had to before I could go to college. My family was like, okay, you need to work every department on a movie and figure out what department you want to be in. I did that, and I decided I have no interest in this life. There is not one department I want to be in. And then I went to college.
Yeah, and you went to college. What you studied?
I went to UCLA.
Yep.
Pat was trying to avoid that.
Yeah, I don't want to say where, but
I'm a Bruin. I went to UCLA. I studied.
Edit out.
You can edit it out.
Okay.
I studied
I have a little
anthropology, and then I went to Cordon Bleu in Paris after that.
Why anthropology?
Because I studied food anthropology as my minor. I loved understanding cultures and food. So I studied culture with anthropology and then food anthropology as to how cultures develop through their food practices.
That's cool.
So you're already thinking about that. You're already thinking about
I knew I loved food.
Yeah.
Well, I actually tried to do psychology first and realized I don't want to hear
Too much
people's
science
problems.
involved.
I got enough of my own shit problems. I do not need to be listening and helping others. So
What I want to know is how food impacts culture.
So I was like, that sounds great.
Yeah.
By the way, you have to understand, nobody in my family ever went to college.
Yeah.
I was the first. So they were like, are you just trying to buy yourself some time before you have to work? Is that
Back
what's
in the movie
happening here?
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and then I just said, I'm going to culinary school.
What was something interesting? I'm curious about this food anthropology stuff now. But what was something interesting that you learned about? I'm sure there was several, but that you remember that stood out to you.
I think that a lot of what I realized is that culture is really its birth is out of the food, and the food that kind of defines a culture has a lot to do with what's available in that area, right?
Land.
So part of the interesting part of Italy is that the food you get in the north is not the food you get in the south. I think we've started to understand that, but for 20 years I've been having to preach that because nobody seems to understand that you can't go to Venice and get great pizza.
Right.
You get seafood in Venice. They're on the ocean.
Right.
And you get hearty food because it's freaking cold there for many months of the year.
Yeah.
And you get a lot of dairy when you go to Tuscany and Umbria and Emilia-Romagna, when you don't get as much heavy dairy when you go down south. You get olive oil, right? So really understanding that is going back in history and understanding just the culture of the people that were there. And why are there Middle Eastern products in Sicily and all over Campania?
No.
Well, and also they were a lot of the Middle Eastern countries, North African countries, were invaders.
Egypt.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all invaded southern Italy. It was constantly being invaded, right? And there were the salt trades and all of that. Turkey. Yeah. So that's why the food is such an amalgamation of many different countries. And there's bits and pieces of flavors, right? There's cinnamon and raisin used in Sicily. Well, you don't use it anywhere else in Italy in their food, you know? But you see it because they were invaded by the North Africans that brought it in. So that's where it connected. I became more of like a historian teacher of culture and why they eat a certain way and why those foods are so important to them. And that's where it came from. So then I thought, okay, now I'm going to do the other side. I'm going to actually learn how to cook.
Avocado. And I don't know what else.
Almonds, citrus. Citrus is really the thing that was here.
Yeah.
From forever ago.
And all that stuff.
Yeah, that is that is in our history. Anyway, it was fascinating to me because it really helped me understand my culture. Because yes, my family told me stories and yes, they know, but they didn't know why. Like, I'm a big why person, but why? There's got to be a reason why we have these ingredients. Yeah. And it made me a better teacher, which made me a better cook, which made me better at doing my job that I did for 23 years, which is teaching cooking on television.
Yeah. So what was Paris like, going to school in Paris?
Oh, I love Paris, but don't tell anyone.
Why not?
I love Paris.
I love Paris. Well, because I'm supposed to love Italy more than Paris, but I love Paris.
Yeah, Paris is great.
Paris is the chicest place on earth.
like
it really is. Yeah. And even though the people can be
not
the kindest and
but
warmest,
I've never experienced that. In the couple times I've been there, never experienced that. In fact, they were almost better than the Americans.
I experienced it.
I was going to say, I wasn't comparing them to Americans per se.
I always compare.
I went during Bastille Day, so I definitely experienced it because it's a little crazy that day.
Yeah.
But no.
Listen, they're just, the French in general tend to be a little more snooty, right?
Yeah, and
the Italians and the Spanish tend to be a little bit warmer and inclusive and family-oriented, where the French, family-oriented, but they're a little snootier. Don't you think?
I don't mind it, maybe.
They don't snub you.
Maybe I don't mind it.
Okay. Well, I know a lot of people who go and feel the same way. And I lived there for a year and a half.
Yeah,
and I can tell you that it's rough.
I'm sure,
It's rough. Yeah. Even trying to speak Italian and not speaking English, because that is one of the things that really irritates them, it still was like...
Maybe I just look more ethnic and like less touristy than others.
Do I look touristy?
No, not you, just in general. But Pat, I mean, you should have been in the same boat as me.
Yeah, exactly. And he didn't have the same experience. So maybe most
you guys
people have our
gotta come to Paris
experience.
with me.
I guess so.
I mean, this is.
I guess that's the answer.
Solution,
That's the answer.
Paris and pizza.
What are some things you remember about that time, just in school or out of school?
How many croissants I ate, and what I would do. I mean, we would make so much food, and I would go back to my one-room apartment, and the amount of stairs I would always have to do, which kept me nice and trim. I made some really fabulous friends from all over the world that I still talk to today, which I think was a real gift for me. It was really hard, though, to be there. I never left my family before that.
How many years is it, the program?
It's 2 years. 2 years. Yeah. But I traveled to the States with my family, right? I grew up in LA. I went to college in LA.
All your friends were in your family.
Yeah, all my friends are in my family. And then all of a sudden I pick up one day and I just leave to a country where I do not speak the language, at a school that today they speak English, but they didn't then. So you had to learn everything in French.
So they taught in French?
Everything was in French. The classroom was in French, and when you were in the kitchen, it was all in French. So how do you pick it up? Exactly. It was rough. It was really hard. Luckily, I spoke some Italian. I didn't speak some. I spoke Italian, which was helpful because they're all Latin-based languages. Right. So it was a little bit easier than the Korean girls I was with, the Japanese girls I was with. Yeah.
Like, you're having to learn a new language while learning food.
The Swedish girls they didn't it was like, what? And things were flying, and these chefs were like, they were not nice to us at all. Yeah. It was a rough time. And I tell you that I called my parents a million times saying, I want to come home. And they're like, if you come home, we're not helping you.
You're working in the movie business.
And you haven't even finished school, so you can't even get a job. And I was like, so anyway, I stayed there.
Was the plan to come back, though, like immediately after?
Well, I had a boyfriend who ended up being my husband at the time.
That you met in Paris?
Nope, I met him here. I left him too, which is, I don't know what the hell I was thinking. Truly, I got there and I thought, okay, I want to go home. I did it. I got on a plane. And
what other option did you have, like, to be a chef? Like, that was kind of the route,
at the time, I didn't really have any other options. As a female in those days, 25 years ago, no one would have hired me.
Yeah, like, you have to go Le Cordon Bleu. Like, that route was
You don't have to go to Le Cordon Bleu, but you got to go somewhere. So the other options were CIA, which I got into, Hyde Park, but I didn't want to live there. I was like...
Chicago, come on.
There was no school in Chicago. And San Francisco. Those were the two other spots in the U.S. But San Francisco is an option, but I'm like, that's not far enough.
Yeah.
Like, I have to show my family that I'm tough. I can do this. I can get out of the family business and do my own thing.
Is that what went through your head, though, at that time?
No. Yeah. At that time, I was just like, I love cooking and I love desserts. And you guys have to understand, I really love desserts. And in my mind, where else would you go for amazing desserts and pastries but France? You have to go to France.
Yeah. And Paris, more specifically.
And my thought was I was going to be an unbelievable pastry chef. Mm-hmm. I just figured I could do this. I love being around sweets. I'm a sugarholic. I can do this. That's why I did it. And then I got there and I was like, this is a mistake. I'm obviously not cut out for this stuff.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go home. And they were like, you're not coming home.
Yeah. But you
So
did
I
come
sucked it
back
up.
right after graduating, or did you stay there?
No, after graduating, I wanted to go to hotel school. After that, I got used to it. And I was like, okay, I can do this Europe thing. I want to go to hotel school in, where did I want to go to hotel school?
Like
Switzerland.
Like a hospitality program or something?
Yeah, Switzerland has one of the best hotel hospitality programs in the world.
Never heard
So
of it.
I wanted to go there. And well, no, because if you're not in that world, you wouldn't know.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say like the one in New York.
Cornell?
No,
Cornell,
honey.
yeah.
I was all about Europe at
Yeah,
that
you're
point.
like, okay,
I was
I'm
like,
out.
I want to have an unbelievably high-end chic pedigree.
Meanwhile, long distance relationship.
Long distance relationship.
Got it.
Yes. And my boyfriend at the time was much older. He was like 8 years older. So he had a business.
Yeah,
He was
yeah.
Anyway, my parents were like, no, not going to pay for it. You got to come home. You got to work. So I came home and I started working in kitchens. So I worked for a French chef at the Ritz-Carlton. Then I worked for Wolfgang Puck. And I worked for Sherry Yard.
Spago.
Yep,
Yeah.
at Spago. And I realized that life sucks.
Yeah.
Like,
It's like
no
a restaurant
money.
life?
You have no life.
You didn't see a future in it for yourself.
Well, I saw a future in it, but I was like, how am I ever going to support myself?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
never going to make it. It's $5 an hour,
Right.
if that. And that's before taxes.
And you're working
And you're
a lot.
working like
Yeah.
crazy hours. I'd get home at 4 or 5 in the morning.
Wow.
And a lot of the people I worked with were like out all night, drugs. It was everything. And I thought,
Jeez.
I'm never going to make it. Like, I'm just not built
Yeah.
to do this.
Yeah.
So I started food styling. I started, assisting friends. I started private chefing and doing stuff like
I was going
that.
to say, how did the whole like Ron Howard thing come about?
Well, because I realized, okay, I need to make some money so I can actually be on my own, or else I'm going to have to be living under my parents forever. And eventually they're going to be like, this isn't working out. You're going back to the movie business. So I just thought, I got to get a job where I can make some money.
Anything to avoid the movie business.
it just wasn't, I don't know. I guess I didn't want all those strings attached. I just
Yeah.
want to be my own person.
Right, yeah.
Even if I didn't make a lot of money, I wanted to be my own person.
Yeah.
I didn't want to live under that.
Mhm.
Not that it's a bad place to be, because many of my family members were there,
Right.
but I just didn't want to do it. Anyhow, nothing. I started private chefing, and one friend told another, and before I knew it, I got Ron Howard, I got a couple of other high-end celebrities, and then I got some just rich people.
Yeah.
And I started just cooking and delivering meals. It was boring as hell.
So where
but I
were you
did it.
cooking? You weren't.
Some people, like for Ron, I'd have to do it at his house.
And this is the 90s we're talking about now at this point, or early 2000s?
Early 2000s. Yeah. Late 90s, early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just started doing that. And on the side, I would assist some friends who were food stylists for food magazines. And eventually in the early 2000s, 2001, I think. Maybe it's 2002. Wait, when was 9/11?
2001.
Yeah. So
Around that
September 2001, right? So
Yeah.
then January 2002, I get a call from a friend of mine from Food and Wine magazine saying, we're really trying to get some chefs, local chefs together, some from New York, some from LA, and we want them to create some recipes, and we're going to do some like family cooking. And I said, all right, I'll try it. Why not? This is great. I can food style my own piece. We're getting places in the world.
Yeah.
I did it. I got my family together. My grandfather was getting a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Oscars that year. So I put my family together at his house, and I did a spread of food. And before I knew it, the magazine came out. I got a call from Food Network who said, put yourself on tape. That took me 6 months to do. And then after that, everything just, Everyday Italian started, and it just snowballed. My career just like started going and going, and I just kind of got on the treadmill and kept going.
Yeah. I read, and I'm sure you could speak more to it, that you weren't really comfortable at first being on screen. Like you don't want to do that. Is that true?
True.
Uh,
I hated it. I
Wha-
lost 15 pounds my first season. That's like
what was
how
it? What did it
nervous
come?
I
Were you
was.
just like self-conscious about yourself, or was it more of just?
Yeah, I was self-conscious. I was uncomfortable looking at the camera. I didn't understand, like,
Mm-hmm.
wait, I'm cooking and I'm supposed to look at like what I'm doing, but I'm also supposed to look at you. I'm also supposed to tell you what I'm doing, and I'm also supposed to tell you a story around it.
Yeah.
Without chopping my finger off.
Without chopping my finger off.
Right.
And making sure everything's actually cooking and not burning.
Yeah.
And I have all
'Cause
these
when you-
cameras and all these lights, and don't move too far to the right or too far to the left because you're out of the shot.
Right.
And make sure that your mic doesn't move, and make sure it doesn't fall down your pants or fall. Like I couldn't wrap my head around all that. And plus, I was doing all the prepping. I was writing all the recipes. I mean, it was just a lot. This is
It's
the
a little
very
different
beginning.
now. Right? Everything's like prepped for you.
Actually,
just
with
show up.
Giadzy, nothing is prepped.
Yeah, you still
I've
do it.
reverted back to those days at
The
this
old days,
point because it's a beginning.
And sorry, I
startup.
didn't mean just for you, but the industry in general.
Yeah,
Like I
it's
feel like
totally
you
changed.
when you watch now, it's just like, here we go, some onions. You're like, wow, that was really fast.
Yeah, I mean, it's different. For
Yeah.
now, for everybody, it's second nature. You can't.
Right.
But at the time, no. And I wasn't an extrovert.
Yeah.
I was very much an introvert.
Yeah.
And I think what people don't understand is people who love cooking and love being in a kitchen are usually not people who are good on camera.
Yeah.
The reason we chose to show you our affection for you back there through the plate
Right.
is the reason that we're not
Right.
extroverts.
I mean, if you see like any back of the kitchen, like
Yeah,
people,
well,
everyone's just like sweating and it's
No, it's not glamorous.
Right.
It's not TV friendly.
yeah.
It's like, no.
Right.
You
So-
have your
but
makeup
Food-
and your hair and your nails done. Like nobody does. You
Yeah.
look like a friggin' mess.
Right. Was Food Network already doing a lot of shows at this time, or was it just starting to pick up? These,
Just started.
Yeah,
And
so
it
it was
just
like-
started.
yeah, and we talk about this all the time about
But like Emerald was already on.
Yeah.
right about like how Food Network and like a lot of these shows made almost celebrities out of chefs. Before
For
that,
sure.
chefs, like you said, were back at the kitchen. Like they're not on screen, so it's like people weren't maybe
Blue
growing
collar
up.
jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
These are
exactly.
jobs for people who can't go to college
Yeah.
or don't see a future for themselves. They're
Yeah.
manual labor jobs. They're not glamorous jobs.
You know, I will say, I'm sure the Food Network founding story is amazing as well. But I remember watching, Emerald and everybody early on, like with my grandparents, right? And like you guys, about family, like all we knew was cooking at home. We didn't really go out. We didn't have the money to go out. Like if we did go out, you would like, wow, Cheesecake Factory. You're like, wow, that's what a treat that is.
But
Now
that's
it's
all
like-
that was there.
That's
right?
all that was there.
That's all that America was.
That's all we knew.
It was all chain restaurants. And
Right. It wasn't like this, specialty Italian, North Italian, Southern France.
Hell
Right. It wasn't
no.
none of that stuff. But it was just so interesting as a kid to see. And I mean, that's why I'm nowhere near a good cook, but like I enjoy cooking. But that as a kid, even I was like, wow, this is cool. Like cool people get to be on TV cooking, right? So that means that like if you cook, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right. Wish I pursued it, maybe looking in hindsight, but it was just so interesting to see that in yourself. And I mean, there were so many people, like Pat said, that became celebrities and almost made it this cool thing to go from behind the kitchen to in front of the screen. Like it was quite phenomenal, really.
And nationwide. Like
Yeah,
you have to
nationwide.
think like Julia Child started that a long time ago,
yeah.
right? But it was local.
Right.
And there were all the locals popping up in all these different cities, but this is like international.
Right.
I mean, Food Network was aired in 90 countries. We spoke
Wow.
different languages.
Yeah.
Like when people would go to Japan and send me a picture and be like, "Oh, you speak Japanese. Oh, you speak Spanish. Oh, you speak this." All over the world.
Yeah.
Like
That's
so
crazy.
it blew it up into a completely different world than it could have ever imagined it being.
Yeah, I can imagine most people who are in culinary school, the goal is to either get out and maybe work somewhere for a bit and then just open up your own restaurant, like to have your own
Yes,
restaurant.
that was
And
always
and I know you eventually, opened up your own restaurants, but in the meantime, when this opportunity comes about where it's like to be on TV and it's like just starting up and it's not something that you could have ever imagined, did it feel weird? Like, am I off track? Am I on track? Like, what am I trying to, like, how was your mindset at the time?
Well, it was weird because my family was in the movie business.
Right.
And in those days, unlike today, TV is not as cool as movies.
Yeah.
Right? Like TV is like the bottom of the barrel.
Right.
You can't be an actress, so you're going to be a TV actress. It's like
Yeah.
it's really bad.
Like soap opera.
Exactly. So it was not seen as something that was cool or hip.
Yeah.
And so my grandfather, I remember specifically him telling me like, I built this family and I built this business and we're glamorous and we're high end. And now all of a sudden you're going to be on TV. You're going to ruin everything I've built. So
Was that actually
that's,
a conversation you had with him?
yes, that's what's going on.
Yeah. Wow.
That was like the mindset at the time.
I mean, I can imagine even him, like nobody could have imagined
Yes,
how big of a thing it was going to be.
Of course not. And I'm not saying like he said the wrong thing.
Yeah.
No one imagined it.
Yeah.
No. And most people who took the risk, he felt like were below him, right? There are people that didn't have other opportunities, so they just took that opportunity. Right. Yes, he's right.
Yeah.
He's right. Yeah. If you ask a lot of the other people who were on Food Network, Bobby Flay, Emerald, they'll all tell you like, we had no idea. But we figured it could be good press for our restaurants, maybe. And if it isn't, we got nothing to lose.
Right.
In my grandfather's mind, he had everything to lose.
Right.
If this was something that was going to bring the family. It's a different mentality. It's all about family, the family name, building you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Americans don't have that same perception of family. It's different. Everybody's out on their own.
I will say something that you said that's interesting, and I think connected to entrepreneurship in general is that, you know, the people that couldn't be in film, you know, probably did this or they became part of TV back then. And it's very similar to entrepreneurship, I feel like, in the sense that usually the people that are starting a company or doing something new are those that were either rejected from a corporate position or were in that world, didn't like it. They're like, oh, there's got to be something better out there. And they start something and everybody's like, well, that's going to be shitty. And then next thing you know, like, you know, they're a multi-billion-dollar company that they're building. And it just kind of always starts out that way. It's always
it's
the
like they're
naysayers.
Searching.
Yeah.
Right? They don't know.
And they just so happen to stumble upon that. And then it works out. Or doesn't.
They don't fit into the status quo.
Right.
That's always what happens, right?
Right.
So at first they're looked at sort of.
Yeah. Like, what the heck are you doing?
Correct. So
you said you were big on the why. Did you ever think to yourself, like, why me? Like, why was I so fortunate enough to be in that position?
To be on camera?
Now looking back, you know, to when it first happened, like, you know, there's probably like a handful of people that everybody could name that were on Food Network and have still continued to be relevant. You're one of them. You know, do you ever ask yourself, or do you think about, or have you thought about, why me? Or was it just right place, right time?
I think I've thought about it a lot, and I think part of it is right place at right time. Yeah. I truly believe in that. Not everybody does, but I do believe that it's kismic in a way.
Yeah.
The stars have to align. There are people out there that are way better cooks, teachers, everything than me.
Right. But it's not all about that.
But it's not all about that. Yes. But there are people that are more gifted in all departments, right? But the question is the audience ready to sort of
You also have to have a certain personality.
Yes, but you have to understand, Pat, I didn't have that personality.
You get to develop that.
That's what anybody who's known me for like
time.
30 years knows, and my family, they're like, who are you?
How did you?
You are not the same person that you were growing up. You're a completely, even all my friends who've known me since high school, they're like, you're not the same person. It's like, truly, I say this a lot. Forcing myself to do this job has allowed me to tap into a part of myself that I think was hidden from the world. I was not comfortable enough in my family to voice whatever talent I had because you lived under the shadow of people, my grandfather, my grandmother, who had already achieved so much and come from nothing and created an empire. So like,
you felt like whatever you did was not going to be good enough.
Yeah, and if you ask people, kids or adults even, who come from famous or very successful families, they'll all tell you the same thing. It's very difficult to live under that shadow because you don't understand. You can't imagine you could ever be bigger or better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not that that's the goal,
right?
But your identity's in that,
yeah,
and so hard to break free from it.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. So did you were there people that you looked up to or you looked at maybe that were on screen? You're like, I want to sort of try to emulate the way they come off.
Well, I think that, I mean, at the time I watched a lot of The Galloping Gourmet. I know that he had all sorts of other issues that came out after that, but I watched a lot of Julia Child. I did love how fun she was and how unintimidating she made it. And, I think that also when I was doing my cooking show, I used the word we a lot. We are going to do this together. I'm not going to show you how to do it.
Yeah.
We're going to do this together.
Right.
Whether it's a success or not, but we're going to go on this journey together. And I think that word we really helped people not feel intimidated by me. And you have to remember when I started, we're looking at Emerald, chef, wore a hat, kind of intimidating.
Bam, through the salt.
Yeah, Mario Batali was doing Italian food at the time.
Two big guys.
Like
And
how am I possibly going to make whatever they're making the same way?
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think Mario, who is probably one of the most talented chefs in the world, barring everything else that happened, still incredibly talented, and was a mentor to me in the early days. You know, he spoke to people like he knew everything, and he did know a lot, but it wasn't very approachable. And I think that was the difference for me. And the difference that I think Rachel Ray, also very approachable, Ina Garten, very approachable. That's why as women, we became successful.
Right.
Because we were approachable and we demystified all of that stuff that goes on in the kitchen.
As far as like the crew of the show, like the producers, like all the people that were involved, like were they just trying to figure it out as they went too? Like did you ever feel like they didn't know what they're doing
In the beginning? Absolutely. None of us
until
knew.
like a rhythm kind of came? Like
None of us knew what we were doing.
Yeah.
We were all trying to create new shows.
Yeah.
And I, when I started Food Network, they had, and they still do, they have studios, right, in New York. And so like, okay, come to New York. Well, I'm like, I'm not coming to New York. I'm staying here. My family's here. Like, I want my family in this show. And I'm not going to like be able to just I don't want to pay actors to come do it. I need to be around my family or I can't do this. I just don't have I was so scared. So the ability to have my own family, my own friends around me was the gift. And at the time, they did not do shows in LA.
Yeah.
Nothing. They had no studios. They had nothing. So we had to rent a house. We had to figure out, ceilings of houses are really low for cameras. Yeah. So we shot it with one camera. I did everything 3 times. Once this wide, and once just my hands. I worked my first week of shows, 22 hours.
Wow.
That's how long. Yeah. We barely slept. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. Not a clue.
But did you believe that there was like something that's going to come of this? Or you're just like,
No.
I just don't want to go back to the movie world?
I didn't know what was going to come out of it. And I'll tell you that after the first season, they were like, I think people, I had a hard time connecting because I looked a certain way, which was not what they were used to seeing. So it was like, oh, you hired a model and you just fed her some lines and you pretend, you gave her some recipes and you tried to get her to cook. So I had to fight that a lot. And I, not anymore, but I fought it for 10 years. 10 years of it.
Customers are rushing to your store. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. Shopify POS is your command center for your retail store. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person. Get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone, transform your tablet into a point of sale system, or use Shopify's POS Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. Do retail right with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/founderhour. Once again, go to shopify.com/founderhour to take your retail business to the next level today.
So, working 22 hours or whatever, 20 hours, anything near that is a crazy amount of time. Do you think that, just speaking kind of more generally about work ethic and just working hard, et cetera, that's what it takes to be successful? Is that the level of commitment, the level of, commitment to the risk that it takes to make it? Because again, there's not that many food stars on TV or celebrity chefs or whatever we want to call them. There's really not that many around the world. Is that like, what does it take to become that good, to become that known, right? Whether or not that is the goal, but that's kind of the result here. Is that what it took?
I think when you start anything when you start something, it's going to require a lot of commitment.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that commitment's probably a lot of your time
Yeah.
and energy. And that's just kind of what it takes. I don't know that I've met many people in my life who said, it came so easy overnight. I hardly did anything to get it. I don't think that happens. It might be different levels,
Right.
but I don't think anything comes easy that.
But you guys like legitimately started a new industry in a sense, right? It was like food education, like, online or whatever, on TV or whatever it was. That wasn't a thing. Like now we look back to your point about like, Italian food not being available in 1970s, which is to me crazy because I wasn't born then. Now, if you ask somebody who's born today, they're like, oh, food TV shows, like people are cooking on TikTok like 24/7. Like that's what people do. Like that's my whole feed. Like people do it at home. Like that's crazy. Like grandma's been cooking at home. Mom's been cooking at home all these years. Nobody recorded them.
Yeah. And people have asked me like, why that boom in the early 2000s? 9/11.
Really?
Yeah. Anytime there's a disaster, anytime there's some kind of
That makes sense.
economic distress, this is what you get, all new businesses from it. And you guys know that.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs, that the biggest, greatest inventions have always happened when there's like a crisis, right? And 2011 was the shift that Americans stopped going out to eat so much and started cooking in.
Well, that, and also I'm sure they're flipping through the channels, seeing the news, and it's all like devastating stuff. And then you come across this food channel and you're like, this seems fun and light. Like I'm just gonna, like, I'm not even, I remember I would just watch it just like, I'm like,
Entertainment.
no, while I'm eating, I'm like, this is, I'm just like hungry. I'm just like watching it. I'm not really.
Let me get hungrier.
Yeah, hungry.
Yeah, but if you ask people who had restaurants at the time, they'll tell you their business just plummeted from one day to the next.
We're talking 2001 and then 2011 again. So after post 9/11 and post like recession or great financial crisis.
Yep. People just decided that they were staying home and they were entertaining at home. But guess what? Now you got to learn how to cook. And so if you didn't know how to cook, you were going to learn how to cook. And people were really emotional about reconnecting with their heritage in a way that had been disconnected before. I think people started to prioritize family, all these things that had been disconnected. They all reconnected. And that all together was why the stars aligned and some of us became,
And the show Everyday Italian was 8 years?
Yeah.
Did you think it was going to be that long?
No, none of this. I didn't believe any of this. I was always like, okay, well, when it ends, I'm going back to catering. When it ends, I'm going back to private chef.
Yeah.
I was always like, when it ends, I had no expectations of anything, to be honest. And the great thing about my family is neither did they. I know you laugh, but like being a woman, nobody did. They were like, okay, she's having some fun. Eventually she's going to get married. She's going to have some kids. And maybe she'll come back to the movie business. And that's it. So nobody had any expectations. So guess what? Neither did I. Yeah. So I was like, I'll just run it and we'll just see where this goes.
Yeah.
I'm mainly laughing because there was a question I think, we asked when we were interviewing the founder of Xbox not too long ago about like, the not only like lifestyle, but like what he wanted to do. And is that something that he saw himself doing? And he was like, you guys are like millennials. Like you guys think like everything's like a lifestyle and like we made a choice. Like we had no fucking choice. It was just like, you just did it. And like, if it worked out, it worked out. And if it didn't work out, then it didn't work out and you do the next thing.
Nowadays we talk about, you got to plan your life.
Right.
Where do you see yourself in 10 years? That wasn't the mentality. Like we just did not think that way.
I also feel like a lot of that has led to a lot of anxiety and depression in people. Like, and that's increased
Hell
significantly.
yeah.
Because it's always like, okay, well, I'm not content with what I have now.
Yeah.
I have to keep growing. I have to keep building. I mean, and I speak from experience. Like that happens all the time. It's like, this is just not enough. Like I need to do more. We need to do better.
But
we need to
guess
make
why
more money.
you feel that way?
Yeah. Because that's what society's kind of told you.
And where you think you're getting that? Social media.
Yeah.
Because you're watching everybody else like,
comparing
wait,
yourself,
this person has got this and this person's got, you're always comparing yourself. We didn't have that.
Right.
So maybe you were comparing yourself to a couple of friends, but like the world wasn't so open for you to see what people were doing.
Like you were on a path to being in the culinary world and the traditional culinary world. And this whole opportunity comes out that has never happened before. And you obviously, credit to you, you jumped on that opportunity. Because a lot of people, I feel like are presented opportunities, but they're so one track minded that they're like, no, I'm on this path and I'm not going to deviate from it and do whatever this random TV show you're pitching me is. I'm just I want to be a chef. I want to be in the restaurant and all that kind of stuff. But like you can't ever predict where things are going to go. Things are changing, and now even faster than they were before. So it's like having that open-mindedness and flexibility and malleability to be like, you know what? I need to separate this craft that I'm learning from this career that I'm supposedly supposed to have, because there could be something that is more lucrative that I can't even imagine yet.
You just got to go on the journey.
Yeah.
And you just got to trust your gut that whatever opportunities come, you'll make the right decision. And even if you don't, you learn from it and you move on and do something else. Like, I think, I have a 16-year-old daughter, and everything's about, what's my career going to be? Mm-hmm. And I have to plan college for my career. And I'm like, dude, you're 16. Who knows? You might have 17 different careers.
Right.
Like, this is a journey, guys. We're on it for as long as we're allowed to be on it.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoy the journey, take the chances, see where they lead you. Some will be great, some won't. I don't know, just enjoy it, because if I were to rethink and overthink every step that I did or not take those opportunities, then I wouldn't be here. I'd be working in the movie business doing something else.
So along this time, as it's starting to grow and gain popularity, were you just on a high, like just feeling like on top of the world, like things are just working out, or were there like certain challenges that came along the way that maybe people don't know about that you had to face and deal with that you're able to share?
Well, I think I never felt like I was on top of the world. I always felt like, I grew up watching actors come and go from popularity to not being. So I felt like I knew that this is temporary. This is not something that's going to last forever.
Like one day I might be here, and one day they might.
Yeah, they may not like me, or they may fire me, or I don't connect anymore. Like, it happens all day. And I used to watch actors go through that, right? You just, not the flavor of the day or the month or the year. And so I knew that this was a temporary thing. And I just really saw it as a job.
Right.
And I just knew that I got to make hay while the sun is shining and move on after that and be okay with whatever. And so, and because I have a big family, I felt like it's okay. Like, I have my family. Like, that is my grounding. And I think that for me, I had no idea where it was going. I had no expectations of what I wanted it to be. And I just thought, okay, it's good while it's lasting. And I'll take the opportunities that come my way. I'll enjoy them. And I kept getting, okay, then you do a book here. And then you do. And, when you're in it, when you're on that treadmill, you don't have a lot of time to think about everything else.
Right.
You're in the moment. Then I got pregnant. Then I had a kid. Then we switched shows. Like, it was like boom, 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 boom. And so sometimes when you're in life and daily life, you don't have time to look out and beyond, or step away from you and just look down. So it's you're just getting through the day. And working as a mom, it was rough. It was rough balancing. It was rough having a child and bouncing back 6 weeks later, going back on, back to work. I think it was rough, being a female in this business, people taking you seriously.
Yeah.
It's rough in the restaurant business for people to take you seriously when you're a woman from TV. And when I opened my first restaurant in Vegas, it was like, people were like,
Even after all that.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But you have to remember, when I opened Vegas, there were maybe 2 other female-owned restaurants on the Strip. They were all male. They were all celebrity male chefs on the Strip.
Like Emerald, Bobby,
Wolfgang.
Yeah, Wolfgang.
There were tons, but there were ones from Europe, from Japan, like all over the place, right? But there were no females. And so I think when people saw me, they were like, is this a joke? What is happening here? So it's just a lot of stereotyping, a lot of not a ton of respect. But, now that it's been 23 years, now I do get respect. But it took a long time.
But do you think, like, generally,
which is why I never saw myself as like, I'm on top of the world.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah. You always felt like there's this like
Monkey on my back.
yeah. But do you think as a industry, like it's not, are women still kind of in that position now, or do you think that's changed generally? Obviously you're not, because you've
I think it has
this.
gotten a lot better.
Yeah. But it's still,
yeah. I mean, look, women in general. We don't even have the right to have an abortion in some states. So it got to a certain level and now it's like, I mean, forget my business. All women. I mean, I think we were getting, and now we're sort of taking a couple of steps or more, if for some women feel like it's a lot of steps down. But that's in all businesses. And I think the restaurant business has definitely gotten a lot better.
What was it like when you were opening up your first restaurant? Like you had
hell,
because you hadn't done that in a long time. I mean, you had
I'd never done it.
Yeah, you had never done it, but you hadn't even worked in one. Like you were working.
Yes, I'd worked in one, but like
way before you were doing TV, right?
Yes, way before.
Yeah, so
I
like
hadn't been in that restaurant
Right.
grind for a long time.
Yeah.
And I still have a 275-seat restaurant, and I never had a restaurant in a hotel that is a boutique hotel, has 150 rooms on one of the most important strips in the world for food. And I it was difficult. I mean, I got divorced over it. Like my life sort of started to just crumble. And I had a 5-year-old, and I was getting divorced, and all of a sudden, like it was hell. It was hell. I mean, it was really tough.
Yeah,
really, really, really tough. And I think, I think that there were moments and glimmers where I felt like I was on top, but for the most part, there was.
Are you somebody that like
juggling.
really throws all of you into something when you're working? Yeah, like you decide I'm opening up a restaurant. Like this is all I'm mainly
That's
focused
all
on.
I see. Yes. Yeah. I'm tunnel visioned, which is probably part of the problem and why my marriage fell apart. So,
but was opening a restaurant like almost expected? Like that was the next step? Like did you have to do it? Or you wanted to do it?
I don't think it was expected, but I think that I wanted to prove that I could do it. I didn't actively look for it. They came to me with a few different spaces, but then they eventually came to me with this specific space. And it was a 2-floor parking garage. And I got to rebuild. I get to build a restaurant. That almost, actually, I will say never happens in Vegas.
Don't say no to something like that.
Ever. Like you never get carte blanche to do that. Ever. And it had a view of the Bellagio fountains. And my name is on the strip. It is not in a casino somewhere. It is on the strip.
Yeah,
when you drive down, you can see it. Yeah. So I think I felt like, holy shit, I have to take this. Like even if it's the biggest failure of my life,
you have to try.
I have to try. I have to try. So I did.
And was the TV business, was it lucrative at that point yet or not really?
No. Books were lucrative.
Mm-hmm.
The restaurant, lucrative.
Mm-hmm.
The TV business, not great. It was okay. I'm not going to say it wasn't good but it wasn't as good as books, as endorsements, and as the restaurant in Vegas. I don't mean restaurant business in general because restaurants really are rough, but this restaurant in Vegas, yeah. But you needed the TV to feed all the other businesses, right? You don't get those businesses.
Like the marketing,
for me, other chefs did get those businesses, but I was not going to get those businesses if I wasn't on TV. So the TV helped get me all of those other things because I did the reverse where more chefs opened restaurants, then went on TV.
Yeah.
Or did cookbooks and restaurant and then went to TV. I went to TV and then worked backwards.
Yeah.
So I needed the TV.
It's almost like what we did with this podcast. Yeah. Like people like become like these like really famous celebrities and they start a podcast. We're just two random dudes. Let's just start a podcast.
Yeah, but that's
but it's kind of nice. Yeah. Because you don't have a lot of expectation to like.
But I tell you,
you
can have more fun when there isn't as much expectation.
So it's interesting because you keep calling it a job, and I'm sure that you're doing that intentionally because that's probably what it was or is or was. But did you ever lose your passion for food and cooking along the way?
Oh, yeah, many a times. Yeah. I think that when it becomes your job and you're doing, I love to cook, but I love to cook when I don't have people in my face asking me what I'm doing, how I'm doing it. And by the way, stand over here. That angle doesn't look so good. Can you repeat that again? Can you, recook that? Can you retoss that? Can you retaste that? So I love the art because to me, that's my meditation. That's how I relax. I go into a completely different space. Yeah. It's like nobody's even around me when I'm doing it. It's a dance and I'm in it by myself, right? But when I have a crew and I have a mic and I have this and I have lights and I have to,
it's a job,
it becomes a job.
How do you fall back in love with it?
I take breaks and I go to Italy. And I get the hell out of here. Yeah. And once I do that,
you kind of get
I reconnect.
Revitalized.
Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of doing Giadzy is it has really reconnected me to Italy and my culture in a way that I think I had sort of lost.
Was that something that you were thinking about for a while before you started, or?
That was something I started in 2016.
Yep.
It was a way for me to be able to have a more timely conversation with all of my fans because my shows were taped 6 months in advance, right? So in June, we're shooting Christmas. And it just seemed a little bit detached. And as social media came to birth and came to become so popular, I felt like I didn't have a vehicle to talk to people in real time. So I started it as a blog, started Giadzy as a blog in 2016, just as a way to have conversations. People were always asking me about like my daughter and what did I feed her and how was I juggling being a single mom and all this stuff. And I felt like I couldn't really address that stuff on my show. It just didn't seem appropriate, right? Or evergreen.
Cut. Let's redo that. Take that
exactly. Like it didn't seem, so this was a really great way for me to converse.
Right.
So that's how it started. And it went that way for a long time. And I did travel tips. And because people always ask me, like, where do I go when I'm in Rome? Where do I eat? Where do I stay? And I was like, I got to have a place where I have all this stuff. Because anyway, so I could direct them there. So I did that. And that was a side gig. I had a couple of employees and we all did it together. Whatever. Simple, easy. And then COVID. And the world shut down. And I had some friends who had, they were importers. A lot of them in New York, New Jersey. And I got a call one day and one of my importer friends was like, I have all this great Italian products sitting in my warehouse. I don't know how long this is going to last. And the restaurants are closed. Nobody wants anything. What am I going to do? Maybe you can help me move it. So I built a little pantry business quickly, like bootstrapped it, e-commerce. And I started selling the stuff and shipping it to people around the country. And that's how the pantry side of Giadzy grew. And when that became successful, I was like, I'm going to wait till COVID's really over to see if this really is going to work. Because so many businesses were thriving during COVID, and then COVID shut everybody, the world opened up, and those businesses were done. And it continued, and it continued. And I started realizing that part of it was because I would tell them what to do with these ingredients. For instance, I have all these, this library of recipes, and I was just connecting this shaped pasta from this brand with these tomatoes, with this oregano, with this salt, and I would create the recipes to go with it. Recipes that I pretty much already had.
Yeah.
And that's why it started to just...
It's like A to Z. It's like the ingredients, but also how to make the food.
Correct. Everything. Right.
And so for those that are hearing about Giadzy for the first time, what is it or what was it and then what has it become?
It was a blog and it has become an e-commerce platform where there's media, content, and a pantry business, all things Italian. So you can get travel, you can buy products that are direct from Italy.
Right. These are packaged goods for the most part?
These are all non-perishable. Okay. Well, actually, that's not true because I have 2 parmigianos that are perishable. So perishable and non-perishable goods. And you can also buy kits with all the ingredients to make cacio e pepe, let's say, lemon spaghetti, which I'm famous for, all that. Content, travel, and soon tabletop. I mean, the goal now that I've gotten investment and I'm in the world of VCs and all.
You're a true entrepreneur.
The totally different world from the blog.
Tech founder.
Yeah, I was just going to say totally different world.
Valuations
I would say, so I've had a lot to learn. That's for sure. I did not go to business school. So when I started this,
Still don't want to go back to the film industry?
I was like, cap tables? What the hell's a cap table? I don't know what that is. Like all these terms I'd never in my life heard of. But anyhow,
well,
I
if you came to USC, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I didn't know those things either.
Exactly.
I still don't.
You know what? I would say that I would benefit from going to, some kind of program for business because it is
Probably not.
tough.
I did business at USC and I did not learn any of this stuff. So
You didn't? Okay. Well,
I've learned more doing
I
this
think
podcast.
you're fine not going to school. Yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, maybe you create like a Giadzy version of like business where you learn about the business.
yeah. Well, trust me,
Online.
I've thought about
Yeah.
shooting it so that people can see what I've had to
there you
do
go.
to
There you
get
go.
to that point.
Yeah, I think
But
that's
anyhow, I think for me, the goal is it's a one-stop shop for all things Italian. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be travel, it can be product, it can be home, it can be anything. But when you think of Italian, the first place that you think of Googling is Giadzy.
I love that.
And that is the goal for Giadzy. And that's where we're working towards. I'm sure it'll be another 20 years, but, it's been a fun ride.
In terms of where you see just like the culinary world going, obviously there's companies like Giadzy, there's restaurants, there's so many things that are kind of part of that. For someone who's maybe in culinary school now or wants to be in the culinary world, what would you tell them in terms of what to expect?
My nephew, who's 18, said he wants to be a chef, and he asked me that exact question. What do I do? Like, where do I go? What do I think? What do I do? I said, well, the first thing you want to do is make sure that you try different jobs. Same thing as my grandfather and my family said to me.
Yeah.
Try different jobs in the movie business and see where you find your place. I said to him, you got to try different things. Work in the kitchen, start there. Find a mentor. And not me, because I'm your family. So you need to find somebody other than me. And work in a kitchen. And see how that feels. Do that for 6 months. Then see if you can write. Now, he doesn't like to write, so we already know that doesn't work. Do you like to go to restaurants? Do you like to talk about food? What are the things that you like about food? And then find what you are doing that's unique in the marketplace, because it is saturated in a way that it has never been before.
Especially in LA now.
Now it's like all about fusions. Fusing
crazy.
two totally random,
Right.
things.
But to me, and it's funny because I've worked with a lot of chefs who do a lot of fusion.
Yes.
I feel like the ones who are able to test, to basically last, are the ones that stick to their lane.
I thought you were going to say Benihana.
No, but I mean,
It seems like they come and go.
well, because when you think of a certain, I've always
What's a
said,
successful one? What are you thinking of?
no, I'm just saying that, Nobu.
Yeah.
What does Nobu do?
They have very expensive seafood by
Japanese food.
Japanese food. Very expensive Japanese food. It's very simple.
That's the fusion. High priced and Japanese.
But he's not fusion.
Yeah,
He's
it's not
always
fusion.
been
No,
it's
Japanese.
Japanese, yeah.
And it's been top quality, right?
Right.
It's a high quality, right?
Yeah.
So, but if I say someone I'm trying to think who? I don't want to disparage anybody, but I'm just saying people who mix different fusions together, it's very difficult to get through the fray.
Right.
And I don't think it's how people love to eat on a regular basis. And so to be successful in the restaurant business, you got to make food that people want to eat
the time.
regularly.
So let's say you're currently in culinary school. What would you do? What would you given the saturated world of food?
I'd think about where I was from,
Yeah.
the kind of food I grew up eating. Christina Tosi is a great example, right?
Milk pork?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great example of someone who grew up eating a lot of American food. She likes specific types of food, cereals, things like that, and loved desserts, and kind of blended it together to make a very unique style of baked goods.
Right.
And very much in line with the type of food she grew up eating. And I think that's where I'm saying you got to think about who you are, where you come from, and what makes you unique. And if
More
you want to
authentic.
change all that, and if you want to change all that, that's okay. But then you got to figure out who you want to be and stick to that. And that's the authenticity, because that is what I think the world is looking for right now, is authenticity. And if they can smell that you're not authentic,
It just seems with we talk about globalization and westernization and how like everything's just becoming like a melting pot and like all these different cultures are mixing into each other. That piece is just over time. It seems like it's just going away, unfortunately.
Authenticity piece?
No, just like the cultural piece that like sort of feeds into the authenticity piece, right? It's like you talk about where you're from, or you look at your family and how, you know, the food that they made or what it was like to, you know, be around the dinner table with them. But it seems like over time, it's just becoming the same thing. I don't know if you would agree.
I think because we are so inundated with so much information all the time that we've sort of started to lose a little bit our own identity. Like if you think about young kids today, everybody wants to be like everybody else. It's very similar to when I grew up in the 70s. I didn't want to be who I was. I wanted to be like everybody else because I wanted to assimilate into that culture.
But that's also all you know.
Yeah. Huh. But I think that what makes us unique is who we are. And you got to figure out who you are. And I think that as much as, yes, it's become a melting pot, I think we're also starting to shrink.
Yeah.
I think that people are starting to retract and they don't want so much influence from other places anymore. We want to kind of So I think it's going to revert back.
And that's what I was going to ask. And
I think we're not going to be able to globalize as much as we want.
Yeah, no, we talk about reversion all the time, like almost all the time now. It's like everything's kind of.
That's where the signs are pointing. Like to your point, that's.
But when it comes to the reversion back on like food or restaurants, for example, and we talked about this a little earlier of how when we were growing up, even in the 90s, early 2000s, you know, we ate at home. Like that's like kind of all we knew. Like going to a restaurant was either a luxury or like it was fast food. There was really
Nothing
no like in between. Yeah,
agreed.
You know. Are we going to revert back to those days where we are cooking more? I mean, I think it's already happening, but, you know, we're going to start cooking more at home. Maybe we host more people at home. There's more activity in the community around the food. Or do you see there continuing to be a growth in the restaurant space and more restaurants and more restaurant failures as a result of the more and more restaurants? Like, where do you see the restaurant space going?
I think restaurants will always be a part of our communities. They also have to be, because they're an integral part of, you know, the
culture
of our communities. Yeah. And so they're always going to be there. But I think that there was a time where, like you said, it was either fast food or high end.
Right.
And there was nothing for the every night, the everyday. Right. And I think that we're starting to see people doing that. A better food that's a little bit more affordable for families.
I was actually that's funny you mentioned that, because I was going to say it seems like the middle layer is the one that's struggling the most, because you have the fast food and like the, you know, and then you have the really high end restaurants that have their regulars and people come and spend a lot of money, and let's call it the margins are a lot nicer and better, right? Especially if they serve alcohol. But
because it's hard to make money in the middle.
It's hard to make money in the middle. And so it seems like a lot of these restaurants that, like, you know, open up and then like 2 years later they're gone. And it's like,
because it's really hard to make money in the middle. And that's why. But you will see in Vegas, where I always sort of check the market, that's what they're opening.
The middle.
Yeah, because they have so many visitors, they can't always afford to, you know, spend all of this money. Sure. And they don't want fast food because they can get that at home. So why go to Vegas?
But you have a captive audience there. It's a little, you know, and that's why Vegas is so unique. Or even like, you know, somewhere like New York, there's LA, it's a little bit more spread out, but there's captive audiences in these places. But Paris, like London, you know, these like major metropolitan cities, they can do really anything and they're fine. I think more specifically when I think about LA, you know, it's just so spread out, so difficult to commute, so difficult to have a community. Like it's so difficult to see it succeeding versus the European countries.
I think community Vegas. Restaurants, so you have to go to pockets.
Right.
Like you go to West Hollywood.
Right.
There's a pocket there, right? There's like Beverly Hills, I would say is it's not really, because
Silver
it's more
Lake.
Touristy. Silver Lake, Los Feliz, you know what I mean? Brentwood, Pacific Palisades, Santa Monica, Malibu. Those are pockets. Right. If you can open a restaurant there where people go on a regular basis, you'll be in business for 50 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
If you open a high-end restaurant, I mean, they're expensive, but like in Beverly Hills, it's a little different because
But also, like, how often are people going to that high end? Like, how often is someone going to a Michelin star restaurant? Like, I mean, and is there
but they're not money makers, Michelin star restaurants, right? It's kind of like looking at it like a designer who comes out with a haute couture line. They're not looking to make money.
So what are they looking to do?
They're looking to make a name for themselves so then they can open the fast foods and everything else.
Interesting.
It's the same approach as you would look at a designer in the fashion world.
Right.
Think about it that way. You start high and then you work your way down.
Has that worked? I mean, is it sustainable?
Like Nobu to go.
Nobu hasn't done it. I'm always shocked that he hasn't done it, but he hasn't because it's not, he doesn't want to be part of that world. But look at Gordon Ramsay.
Yeah.
Gordon Ramsay,
But then
I
isn't
know
he a
people don't want to
sellout?
think about this, but he's a Michelin starred chef.
But I think he has
don't
that
you
restaurant in Vegas, right? That's
Bunch
like
of them.
He's
a little
got
bit more.
tons in Vegas.
That's not a.
He-
It's just you walk in and have a.
None of them
These
are.
bigger players.
The Michigan, the Michelin star restaurants are in London.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not here at all. So yes, it is possible. Look at it.
But
I mean,
aren't
it's
you
been
considered a
done.
sellout at that point?
Well, you were considered a sellout at that point, but the world has changed. And no, now he's just dominating, and everybody else is like, wow,
Wish we
who
did that.
knew?
Yeah.
But remember, there are a lot of Michelin star restaurants, and there's one Gordon Ramsay. So, like, it's a needle in a haystack. It's not like going to happen. It's like actors, right?
Yeah.
It's only a few get to that top level. But it's not impossible. I mean, with TikTok and social media, I mean, look at all these TikTok stars.
It's insane.
Look at all these Instagram stars.
Yeah.
They're sometimes bigger than any TV
They're probably getting
personality.
more viewers than the Food Network got during their peak.
For sure. That's my point. They have, and their viewers, their followers are diehard. They're diehards. They'll buy anything. So the market since COVID has changed again. A whole new business has they've become rock stars. These TikTokers, these Instagram, these YouTubers, they've become rock stars.
And now they're starting to open up their own
and now
restaurants.
they have their own cookbooks.
Yep.
So do you see how again
It's interesting,
it's
yeah.
happened again?
Yeah. Could have never planned it.
No.
But my question, I guess, is, but are they good? Like, is it good?
Probably some are good and some aren't. Like everything. Not every chef that's
Like,
had
you
a
work
television
20
show is going to be a good
Right.
cook.
But you
Like,
worked
some of it's
22
a show.
hours. You did the show for 8 years. I mean, you went to Le Cordon Bleu. You grinded it out. And then you have, like, random person on TikTok who, like, got bored during COVID and was like, let me go make, crispy rice tuna. And
Hey,
he's
if
like,
it's good, it's good. I don't know.
but they're massive. I mean, like, no, I'm not saying it's bad. It's
Well,
just,
I don't know. We're going to have to see,
Yeah,
right? We
yeah.
have to
I mean,
wait and
yeah.
see.
yeah, it's the longevity piece. It's
Right.
like how
Yeah,
long is it?
you
gonna
have to
last?
be
Giada's been able to
around.
last.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
Like
don't even know their names
you
now.
studied anthropology and like food culture. Like
Right.
you know all this stuff that like
Yes,
if
but,
one
like-
restaurant fails, you can open up another one and be successful.
But the thing is that we have to be there long enough. Like, sure, now you can say that because it's been, for me, 23 years. But like, I don't know. We're only 3 years out of COVID, right? Or
yeah.
so let's
So it
just
seems.
see. Let's see. Some will go on and become giants, and some will sort of fall by the wayside. Isn't that how it always works out?
Yeah.
So aside from Giadzy, like what other things do you have planned or are you excited about? Or are you just totally just tunnel vision focused on that right now?
I'm opening another restaurant in Scottsdale in February, so I'm focused on that.
What's the thing with
it's been a
Scottsdale?
long time coming.
It's on its way.
Scottsdale's huge. Talk
Yeah.
about another city that's really grown exponentially since COVID. People have just flocked there.
Yeah.
And they have some really high-end restaurants. Like,
High-end
people are
hotels.
spending a lot of money in
Oh, yeah.
Scottsdale. So anyway, Scottsdale at the end of February, Luna. And then I have a cookbook that I'm finishing up that comes out in 25.
Is this number? Which cookbook is this?
This is 11.
Wow.
Yeah,
amazing.
it's a lot of cookbooks.
Volume. You got like
I know.
volumes of these things.
Well, this is why I say with Giadzy, it's so great because I can repurpose so much between the
Yeah.
cookbooks, the shows. It's
and you're
like
seeing in real
thousands
time.
and thousands.
You're seeing in real time what works and what doesn't. What are people
Correct.
attracted to? What are people not
Yeah.
attracted to?
which makes me a better writer, makes me a better performer, makes me a better everything.
Curator.
Curator. Yeah. And so Giadzy has been a giant gift. Although it's been a lot of work, it's been a giant gift of making me better and keeping me sort of in the know about what's happening in our culture today in food
Yeah.
Yeah.
with the younger generation in a way that had I
Someone
just done
who's not-
TV or whatever, you just can't stay in touch with it. So it's real time, and it's amazing.
What does Giada cook at home? Like when you're just, hanging out, what do you do?
Whatever my daughter wants.
What
the
does she
time.
usually want?
Does she just walk in and be like, Mom, I want this?
No, she'll usually
Point to
text
the
me.
cookbook.
Oh,
I was
ahead
gonna
of
say,
time? Yeah.
You got to get her to be like, okay, go to the cookbook.
Gotta
point
get
it
the
out.
ingredients.
She's very picky at 16. She didn't used to be. Lots of pasta. She loves herself some pasta.
Yeah.
And
Are you making fresh pasta every time you do that?
no.
Okay.
No. I do make some fresh pasta, but no. I have my Giadzy pasta from Italy, so I use that.
Yeah.
And then lots of pasta. What else does she? Hamburgers. Girl loves her hamburgers. I keep telling her like,
Are you grilling them outside? I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah.
She loves
Are you smashing them?
Yep. Yep. But she doesn't like to cook, but she certainly watches some TikToks and things,
Yeah.
and she'll give me like the latest in the food trend.
Yeah.
We did this sticky rice with mayonnaise and hot sauce and tuna that's pre-cooked that you smash up and mix all together. And she was like, okay, and then
This
you
is the
take the
crispy rice one,
nori.
right?
Yeah, and you take you take the nori and you shove it all in there and then use the nori to grab it all and eat it. Do you
Oh,
guys
yeah,
remember
yeah,
when that was a
yeah,
thing?
Yeah.
So she made me do that for a while, and it was. Anyways, so she has her own thoughts on food, and they don't always. They're not always the most glamorous. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Other than Italian, what's your favorite cuisine of the world?
Japanese,
So like seafood or the meat?
all of it. I just love the creativity. I love the detailed, the ornateness, the petiteness. Like the flavors are totally different than what I know.
Also the like the optionality. Like you have so many different options
Correct.
in both of those cuisines. Like you don't have to just have like pizza. Like you could have a million different types of pasta. Like you don't get sick of it. Is my point. Yeah.
Yep. No, I love. Yeah. I love Asian food, but I specifically love Japanese, and I've never been to Japan, so that's my next goal for this year is to get my butt to Japan.
Yeah,
That
and
was
then
my
you're
goal
gonna
last
start
year.
the Giadzy of Japanese food at some point.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things,
Sure.
yeah,
Will there be a physical Giadzy?
we're gonna do our first pop up this summer in the Hamptons,
Okay.
so we'll see. I mean, I really like the e-commerce
Yeah.
business,
Yeah.
but the powers that be that have invested in me always think that it's great to diversify and have
Right.
a little brick and mortar here and there, which
I was reading yesterday that apparently malls are making a comeback.
they are. Brick and mortar's
because,
coming back.
because of Gen Z.
Yep.
Because they want everything instantly.
I was at a mall this weekend. It was packed.
Yep.
Indoor mall.
It's one of my most anxiety invoking things to be at a mall.
I'm with you.
It is.
I mean,
I do not like
I
malls.
just,
I agree.
I'll
I agree.
do anything.
Yeah. I didn't buy one thing. I was like, too many
But
options.
yes, it's because Gen Zers want it immediately.
Yeah.
And they want to go to the mall and get it. Small bookstore, independent bookstores, like all this stuff. Barnes and Noble's coming back. Like they're all coming back in
Yeah,
droves.
I
So
know. What's one cuisine that you have trouble cooking? Or you just don't enjoy cooking?
I don't cook Mexican food. And I know that's awful, but I don't. And it's very popular food in this country.
Yeah.
It's ranked. It's actually neck and neck with Italian right now.
Yeah.
Believe it or not.
Like American Mexican or like Mexico Mexican?
A mix. I think
Yeah.
because it's usually pretty inexpensive.
Yeah.
So
and everything's
people are
repurposed in a different package.
correct. And so
Burrito, enchilada, taco, they're all the same.
Yeah.
It's just one's wrapped, one's unwrapped.
so it's
One is a bad gift wrap. Like,
It's really popular.
yeah,
But it's something I don't cook.
interesting.
And I don't really eat either.
Mhm.
It's just not, I don't know. It's never been my thing.
Favorite restaurant in LA besides Nobu? I thought you were going to say Nobu. That's why I was just assuming.
I mean, Nobu Malibu is phenomenal,
Fabulous.
especially on the beach. But I would say my favorite right now, Funky.
Really?
He's
Seven
got some
Funky.
good restaurants.
Yeah.
His food is really spectacular.
Yeah, he's good.
I mean, I know not everybody agrees. I've heard many different, reviews of it.
I've never had a bad experience. at
I
his
think it's
restaurant.
phenomenal. And I think he does a really remarkable job. And he does a remarkable job representing the Italian culture and the Italian people. He really does. And the ingredients he uses are really top notch. So,
Funky. Okay.
Well, Giada, this has been an absolute pleasure to just like chat with you, learn about all this, these like experiences you've had and everything you've learned along the way, and we just can't thank you enough for being here and sharing with us.
Well, thanks for having me, guys.